This is Relaytalk with your host DKEN, and round two has kicked off. Now I am a little bit behind these games, so I just thought I'd get together just like 6 out of the 16. There's probably going to be 3 videos total, just recapping round two. So consider this the first one. Now, before we jump right into it, I want you guys, I'm going to remind you every time, to go down into the description, click on the link that says Game Predictions, and go fill out a couple. Even if you don't really know what's going to happen, believe me, I don't either. Please, I just need to gather some data about the future matches. It really helps out the show. And if you could go do that, that would be really awesome. Now, there's one game in particular that I would like to go over first, just because it's just too entertaining to leave for just somewhere randomly in the middle of the video. So here we go. French Cocktail wins over the new SSG community. And since this is a loser bracket game, the new SSG community is out of the tournament. The second seed losing 2 games in a row. Absolutely crazy. I mean, it is something that we've seen before in Relay 1 where the first seeded team lost their first 2 games and just were shut out. But not in this fashion. I mean, the new SSG community, there's always a story to be had with them. So, as for the actual game, 1.16, starts off pretty smoothly, actually. So, Blide from the French Cocktail team ends up leaving the Bastion earlier than Toffinator because Toffinator was staying back, trying to force 20 Obby. I guess it's a good play. I'm not much of a 1.16 runner. I don't really know how much an extra portal saves time. It kind of depends on how far away your home portal is, I believe. But, it all doesn't matter because Toffinator dies doing a blaze bed. And, bro, this team has got to learn how to do blaze beds. Yeah, one was messed up by, who is it, Zach in the first round, killing off the spawner block. In this round, you have, Toffinator dying straight up to one of the beds. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And, of course, I guess he has to reset. I mean, he could have technically gone back, but just starts a new run. And on the second 1.16 run, he ends up misplacing one of the Obby upon building his portal. So all that 20 Obby that he decided to stay back for the second time, it all goes to waste because he just misplaces one single block. And so all that effort is just ruined. He has to go back to his home portal. And by this time, Blide finishes up with a clean 17-minute run. And coming into 1.7, Nixer has a strong lead above the new SSG community. And I wish I could say Nixer played cleanly. He didn't. He came close to dying in another a lot. And there's this one time where he was at half a heart, but he had pushed all the blazes towards the front of the spawner. So he's just chilling in the middle, has to box himself in, completely susceptible to blaze spawns that come out of nowhere and melee him. It was just absolutely insane, the fact that he survived that. But yeah, he just escapes the nether without any deaths. And, by this time, Teddy started 1.7, and he starts catching up. And coupled with a second nether trip by Nixer, the 2 runners are actually neck and neck when they start to triangulate. But there are many eye breaks for both of the players. And the portal is a freaking 0 eye. And so Teddy has to go, back to the nether, get an extra rods. And his nether portal links up with the home portal. So he ends up having to walk all the way back to the stronghold. Nixer actually had enough blaze rods, but didn't have enough pearls. So kind of the reverse situation from Teddy. And he manages to find some random Enderman just chilling in the halls. And he finishes out his run first. And Philocreep was onto running 1.15. This is another 1.15 match. And this is kind of where the crazy stuff starts. So Zach had to actually do his run asynchronously because, scheduling issues. But by the time his, run was actually supposed to be shown on the main stream, the VOD, wasn't finished uploading. So they had to, they had to show us something, right? So what they did was they showed Toffinator's, live playthrough of just his survival world. So you just had this, crazy scene where you have, what's his name? Philocreep just doing a normal 1.15 run on the left, and Toffinator flying around in his elytra, putting up text on a screen advertising his own channel in the sub goal, saying that he will shave his head if he reaches a certain amount of subs. And we never actually truly got to see Zach's run in the end. I mean, it never got shown on the mainstream, and as it turns out, the actual run itself ended up being a forfeit, and I don't even know how to explain this. Here's a clip.
Oh my god. I swear to God, that Sky, I didn't even think it was possible to throw as hard as he did. You guys couldn't see the run, but I just want to say he got to the porter room at like 25 minutes. He needed 2 eyes, so then he hunted for Innerman for about 10, and then he finally gets into the stronghold. He f***s up the 1 cycle, kills himself, goes to the close village, goes back in, f***s up the 1 cycle again, kills himself, goes through the village, comes back, and then on top of that, he fails for a 3rd time. He fails the 1 cycle 3 times. And then what he does is he resets the entire seed and then gets like a 17-minute time, but doesn't record it.
What?
Wait, what?
Yeah.
He
Stopped recording after he reset the seed, and yeah.
So even if feinclap ended up taking like a forfeit of their own, French Cocktail would actually still win out in the end, since feinclap got to play 1.15 first. So I mean, it was basically a free dub from then, but obviously I wish I could say feinclap played well, but he didn't. There were many nether deaths, a reset somewhere in there, a lot of trading complications, because 1.15. You gotta know what you're doing for it to work. I'll say that. Ended up not having enough eyes for the portal, and it was just all a mess. But there was nothing that feinclap could have done to lose the game at that point. So French Cocktail wins with, at the time, the worst win in recorded Relay history. It was like 1 hour 35, which is a long time, guys. But they move on, and new SSG community does not. Now, the next game. Friendless wins over Team KEK. Now, starting out with 1.16, Crowpro and Raul were basically neck and neck throughout all of 1.16. Crowpro ended up forcing 20 obby, while Raul just used the home portal. Kind of like in the game we just covered, where one runner chooses to force 20 obby, one of them just sticks with the home portal. They're kind of the same, I feel like, in terms of advantage. I don't really know. It depends on proximity of the structures. But Raul ends up entering the stronghold a little bit before Crowpo, and he almost ends up taking a death in the stronghold. I mean, he got down to like 1.5 hearts, almost threw the entire game away. But besides that, it was really close. Like going into 1.7, the difference between the two teams was like less than a minute. And, both 1.7 runners had their fair share of scary moments in the nether, as you would expect with this version. And, like, Pix would always have, like, less than 3 hearts for, like, basically the entire nether segment, which is kind of crazy. I mean, he got down to low health way more than I could ever count. But Talking Mime ends up having a cleaner nether split, so he's able to leave earlier. But as it turns out, he actually has 1 rod less than Pix does. Now, going into the tower split, because this was a 1.8 match, you didn't see any OBT from either runner, and Pix ends up finishing his tower with 12 pearls, and Mime with 16. And so Mime does the safe play, since he only has a certain amount of rods, right, like 6 or something. Decides to go back into the nether to get a 7th rod, just to play it safe. While Pix just goes on to like triangulate and find the stronghold. Now, upon Mime exiting the nether, he described it as like some crazy 1.8 glitch where if you're standing on the edge of a block and there's lava, like it just clips and eats the jump. And so he just falls into the lava pool, all of his stuff burns, and he's forced to reset, which is absolutely heartbreaking because you see a runner who arguably did the right play, doing the safe thing, but just gets a glitch that's just not beneficial at all, forcing them to reset. And Pix finishes before Mime, obviously, and Sammy gets a shot at 1.14. And it's a Sevillage seed. Let's go. Another one of these Sevillage seeds. I'm so happy that there's more than like 3 in this tournament, because for a while that's what it seemed like. And this guy dies in the nether with a shield. I don't know how to explain it. We've seen people like die with shields, but also like look really clean with shields. Like I know Rakagan makes a shield, and his nethers are so good. And then you have like me and a bunch of other runners I've seen like not be able to use it correctly. So I don't even know. And Sammy ends up ditching the thing on his second trip to the Nether. But just to flex, when I was running his practice seed, I actually didn't make a shield. And I survived longer than him. So I am the better runner. No, I'm kidding. So Sammy actually does have enough diamonds to make a diamond pickaxe and use that to Nether travel to the stronghold. But the terrain in the Nether is pretty bad, and when he ends up building up his portal, it doesn't, there's no I Spy basically, and Sammy fails one cycle, but he has a bow, so it's all fine. And by this point, there's just too much of a lead that the Friendless has over Team KEK, and they just win. I mean, it all came down to a ugly reset for Mime, and they just couldn't catch a break. So Team KEK is out of the tournament. They are eliminated, and it's a little sad to see them go. Next, we have Adrift winning over the Hot Tourists. Now, this was an incredibly good game. Two stacked teams battling it out in the winners bracket. Now, starting in 1.16, both runners were forced to do Fortress first because of where the portal was placed. And hey, it's always a joy to watch 1.16 runners try to fight blazes without fire res, because let's be honest here, they are super pampered with all that fire res garbage, and us 1.14 and 1.7 runners actually have to fight blazes like real men and women. But yeah, but both 1.16 runners did completely fine. No deaths at all, no real complications. Maljack gets a cave exit after making the Eyes of Ender, and just uses Ninja Brainbot anyway, which led to like a less accurate calculation, which is part of the reason why Neo is able to enter the stronghold before Maljack does. Not only because of that, but also because Neo actually climbed to the top of the bastion before making his second portal. So just these little decisions turning into like either seconds or even minutes of like difference. And before this stronghold calculation thing, Neo actually was behind, and all of that time was made up just because of this small decision. And both runners enter the end within seconds of each other, and Maljack just like strikes a super insane SG perch out of nowhere. Finishes with like, what was it? Let me see here, a 15-minute run, pretty good. And Neo finishes pretty close after blowing down some of the towers. And so going into 1.7, no team really had a huge decisive advantage. Until, of course, Spinnaker is faced with two separate Nether deaths. And he even has to like reset the run at one point due to like the time cycle, because 1.7 is super time sensitive. And Nice White just carries along. He has a super smooth run. And for a while it seemed like that Adrift, there was really no coming back as long as the Hot Tourists just played decently. They didn't have to be fast. They just had to be decent. And unfortunately, Night Twice has a lot of struggles with the end fight. And like, part of it starts off with the fact that he probably didn't have enough arrows. I assume. I couldn't exactly see, but he enters the end with just 5 beds, and it's just kind of a bit of a disaster. He doesn't get enough damage. He has to resort to like using the crystals, and he gets hit off at one point, and while he's falling down, he's like hugging to a tower, and he places the water on the side of the block. But if like water physics, it doesn't do that. It doesn't slow you down far enough. And so he like, it's kind of strange to say that he failed the water clutch, since he technically like placed the bucket of water, but it was on the side of the block, so he just falls right through it and hits the ground under it, not being slowed down at all, and he just dies. And when he goes back into the end for a second time, the exact same thing happens again. He doesn't bring enough beds, he has to resort to the crystals, and he dies to the same exact water emoji fail. And yeah, it's just absolutely insane. And by the time Nice White actually finishes the end final out, DKEN is far ahead with an absolutely beautiful seed. I mean, you have like this desert temple overlapping with a Sevillage. Everything is super close proximity. Had the choice between Dark Oak and Sevillage, but chose correctly. Sevillage is the correct choice. Let's be real here. It is better than Dark Oak. And Microvenger ends up like taking another death. Mostly because like he has to play risky in order to just get his team back into winning chances. But, it doesn't work. Hot Tourist, after the whole end fight debacle from Nice Twice, really had no chance. And Adrift does come away with a victory, and Hot Tourist is being sent into the loser bracket for another shot at the tournament. Next, we have Team Spanish's victory over Team W. So, starting 1.16, Crystal enters another first just by a little bit, but ends up E-raying the wrong structure. She finds the fortress first. Now, she could have done like a little bit of, fortress first routing, but, spent like 20 to 30 seconds just running the other direction and going to the bastion first. I mean, you could have saved like half a minute by killing the blazes before getting all your pearls, but whatever. I mean, if you want your fire res, go right ahead. And Santa actually finds the bastion first, but since the fortress is like kind of hard to find, Crystal ends up having an advantage because she already knows where the fortress is, while Santa like takes a lot longer to look at the thing. Santa ends up leading with like 6 rods and blind travels into the overworld, while Crystal uses the home portal, but because she ends up not having like enough fire res and like not a lot of food, like she decided not to bridge over this expansive thing of lava and builds the portal like not really too close to where the calculator probably wanted her to, but obviously taking the safe play, not trying to get hit off your bridge by a gas, just falling into lava and like having nothing to show for your entire run. Santa ends up having like a clean 22-minute run, which is arguably kind of slow for 1.16, but like no crazy like mishaps happen, and Crystal only finishes like 2 minutes after. So basically neck and neck heading into 1.7. And the two 1.7 runners with Solstice and Pato, these were two runners that really cost their team in round 1. So it was kind of interesting to see like, well, can they pull it out for the team again? Can they prove what they're made of? And first things first, Pato takes a early nether death. Like it was kind of crazy. I think it was in the good section of the fortress, but like there was this entire Wither Skeleton Mafia just cornering him, and he had nowhere to go, and he just gets absolutely destroyed. I probably would have died as well there as well, but it didn't cost him too much time. Pato ends up leaving on 7, but he has to sacrifice a little bit of nighttime, which isn't too bad considering the Ender Pearl drop rates are like increased anyway. And Solstice ends up leaving the nether at around like 10, 11 minutes. Apparently, he said that he had lost track of time, which is something you don't want to see in a 1.7 run since it's like super time sensitive. Even though the drop rates for the Enderman are spectacular, Solstice only has 9 pearls at the end of the tower split, and Pato Cesar has enough to start triangulating and probably make it into the end portal on the first try. And that's exactly what happens. Team Spanish pulls far ahead of Team W, but in classic Pato fashion, he dies once more after killing the dragon. Just like in round 1. he apparently he had like 2 or so hearts after exploding his last bed or something, and while he was like climbing up for the tower to spawn in, he just straight up didn't tower high enough. So when the thing spawned, his head got caught in some bedrock, and he suffocated. Like the dragon was dead and everything, just like in round 1. It was a little bit different in round 1. He burned to death in round 1. But this is just absolutely insane, bro. Don't carry this into your next game. Now, even with this death, Solstice wasn't really in a position to reclaim the lead, having stayed like probably too long at the tower on the second night, getting 3 more pearls than he even needed. Now, you could say it was a safe play, getting extra pearls, but like you already know where the stronghold is, so just get what you need and get out of there. Meanwhile, Sergi, running 1.14, had a really clean base fight, but still died like on the way back to the portal. Like clipped some random stream of lava, didn't have enough health to survive like the burning afterwards. Just kind of a weird place to die, I would say. But I actually had the same exact death when I was running the practice seed. By the way, when I run practice seeds, I don't watch the match before doing so. That would be completely silly. And so like I died in the same exact little 1 block wide lava thing, which just shows that we're both extremely careless runners. Anyway, all his items ended up being safe. It was not a problem at all. Solstice ends up finishing the run at like 15 minutes long. Not really great, but it's his first relay finish. So congratulations, I guess. Sergi loses time like in trading due to terrible villager proximity. His Fletchers were like mad far from the cleric. By the way, if you don't want that kind of thing happening, this is what I do. I actually, in the first couple minutes of your run, you break a considerable amount of beds and like just and break all the workstations, every single one of them. Usually in these desert villages, or heck, even savannah villages, there are not a whole lot of workstations to break. And so it makes it really convenient when you start trading and like just a bunch of like unemployed villagers are next to each other. And you end up not even having to do bail strats, which is really nice. If you are concerned that like the beds clutter up your inventory, like during blowing up or something, just be good at the game. I don't know what to say. Now, as for Esmexium running 1.14, they do a sweet blaze bed and handles the blaze fight pretty well, considering how like volatile the 1.14 blazes are. So good job, wow! But by this time, Sergi is way far ahead, and Team Spanish ends up winning. So Team W, unfortunately, taking 2 L's in a row, is out of the tournament. So sad to see them go, but a little bit happy that I don't have to review 16 matches in a whole round anymore. I'm kidding, but it's true. Next, we have feinclap's win over the only team with pants. Another upset. So the first separation in pace for this game happens when like Pants gets lava just like flowing down his housing bastion, but it's all saved thanks to some incredible glowstone spawns. Apparently like some cluster of glowstone blocks had just like clogged up one of the tunnels to the housing, when like one of the tunnels in the housing bastion. So like it saved like 4 or 5 piglins and the housing bastion entirely. So very cool glowstone. Anyway, it wasn't too much of a time waste to deal with that lava, but he ends up pulling ahead of Rain because Rain has to go take up the like entire mountain to reach the surface and calculate the stronghold, which is unfortunate. You obviously don't want to like end up digging into Y90 just to throw a couple eyes. But luckily it's a 3-eye. The portal is a 3-eye, and Pants is able to enter. I'd say luckily, because Pants like threw a bunch of eyes. Even like using Ninja Brain Bot, I don't even understand how that happens. He only had 10 eyes when he was digging down for the stronghold. 3-eye is like a 8% chance of happening, so pretty lucky, I'd say. And the crazy thing is that Pants can't even finish out the 1 cycle, but is saved once more to resorting to a bow to bring down a couple of the towers. But then he ends up like running out of arrows, and now he has to go and pearl up to them. And as you know, pearls take up like 2 full hearts every time you use them, and Pants actually doesn't have much food left. And so because of this, he's actually forced to death reset in the end and return to the overworld. Now this did cost the only team with Pants a lot of time, and Rain did successfully finish out the run. He only had like 2 hearts left by the time the dragon perched, and somehow was able to use 4 beds, even though like they take out a half a heart each time. But, like on the last bed, it just did 0 damage. So Rain was able to like sword down the dragon, getting incredibly close to an end death, but clutches it out, insane ending. And by the time Pants like is done with their run, Nova is already doing an early nether exit, trying to preserve some nighttime. Obviously the correct play, in my opinion. It came down to Ultimate Gamer Guy versus Nova, who were both 1.7 runners, who had like thrown for their teams in round 1, and now they were back in position to determine the fate of the match. As you know, Ultimate had famously got like an hour and 18-minute long 1.7 run. Anyway, after a second nether trip by Nova, came out with a huge lead, which expanded even further because Ultimate only managed to get like 9 pearls during the tower split. After a really solid run from Nova, it turns out Ultimate can't even find enough pearls to make it in the portal even after like going through all the stronghold chests and using up a second night, which is kind of crazy. Like you have a whole second night, and I think he burned into a little bit that night just going to the stronghold, which is pretty unfortunate. But Ficus, the 1.14 runner for feinclap, ends up entering and by about 24 minutes, which crazy enough was before Ultimate had entered the end, who at this point was still running 1.7. But luckily for the only team with pants, Ficus does actually die in the end. Takes an end death after a failed bowless one cycle. Which, if you're playing 1.14, I don't really understand why you're not bringing a bow. It's only like 3 extra emeralds to buy 1 bow and then like a half stack of arrows, which should be enough. Anyway, things were like basically hanging on by a thread for Team Pants, even with the end death by Ficus. Like there was still a whole entire run behind. I mean, all Ficus had to really do was just go back to the end portal. And Ultimate finally finishes the run. Ends up being like an hour long. So Ultimate has 2-hour-long runs to his name in 1.7 for Relay 2. And yeah, it's just sad because that basically caused their team to lose. Ficus ends up killing the dragon. Combined time is a whopping 1 hour and 47 minutes. And that stands, as of these games that I'm reviewing, that's the worst win in recorded Relay history. 1 hour and 45 minutes. Absolutely crazy. Now for our final game of this episode, Rockin' Balls wins over Tri-County Titanium Mothmen. Now for this match, 1.14 ended up having to go first. So you had Mishbanya versus Curryway. Curryway, who currently holds the fastest 1.14 run. Kind of a scary opponent to go against, obviously. But Mishbanya ends up entering the nether after Curryway, but exits before. So had a little bit of a shorter and possibly cleaner nether split. While post-nether, Curryway decides to rout the village before blowing up all his woods. Which, it's probably not really that helpful. What he did was like break all the workstations. But since that's after trading hours, it's not really going to do a whole lot because the villagers will just keep their profession anyway, and it has to wait until the second day to like forget that you're no longer that profession, which doesn't really accomplish the intended goal, I guess, of having entirely unemployed villagers by the time you hit the minimum trading mark. But it's not a huge deal. Both runners trade very cleanly, and on the way to the stronghold, Curryway, for the content, I assume, like adopts a baby polar bear during triangulation. Apparently, like it was all ocean travel to the stronghold, and like along the way there was a little bit of iceberg, and on it was like a mother polar bear and the baby. And as he was boating across the ice, he like basically a hostage to the bear into his boat, and the bear never saw his mother again. They both enter and very close to one another. Mishbanya ends up finishing first with a sick 21:50 in-game time. Really, really good run. And Rocket Balls has a small lead going on to 1.16. And immediately, Hayes loses that lead by not navigating to the fortress quick enough. But immediately gets it back. The theme of this 1.16 match is that the leads are just getting traded over and over. And the reason Hayes is able to get that lead back over Xylonox is by getting 6 rods faster, and the fact that he has enough obby for 2 portals instead of 1. And as it turned out, Xylonox didn't actually correctly carry over the data packs and all that. So Xylonox didn't get the good rates for both obby and blaze rods. So Hayes ended up having the lead at this point. And then the lead goes right back to the Mothmen as Zai enters the stronghold first. And he eventually ends up surviving the stronghold and finishing out his run. By the time he does, Hayes is actually still like wandering around looking for the portal room. And when Hayes eventually finds it, he ends up having to go back to the nether because, as it turns out, not enough rods. You leave with 6, that's what happens. So by the time like Hayes finishes the run, Illumina, who is an incredible veteran at 1.7, is already building the tower. He ended up skipping first day nether, like trying to get more materials or food or something. I don't really know. I guess just some rust perhaps. And wouldn't you know it, he messes up his tower build. some of the heights are wrong or something. The ladder at the bottom, because of this, just doesn't work. It's a weird 1.7 thing where like if the amount of blocks you drop from isn't a certain number or like even or odd or something, the ladders just decide not to work. And so Illumina like ends up spending a lot of time just like trying to fix the tower incrementally with his bare fists. And so by the time he goes back down to like check on his pearls, all of his stuff has despawned, and he's left with like six pearls. So he just, he finished up the tower. All he has to show for this entire run is 8 pearls. And because of this like botched tower, Rocket Balls is like back in the lead. And this is just, and it was an insane like choke by a speedrunning veteran. Probably just because of the rust in 1.7. And Hinart really didn't have any troubles with their tower split at all. Finishes out with like a 26-minute 1.7 run. Very solid, very clean. And it's enough for Rockin' Balls to take advantage of the choke, and they catch the dub. And that's it for this recap. I hope you guys enjoyed. Probably from now on, these episodes will start having less and less matches to go over because, of eliminations and all that. So I hope you guys are appreciating either the shorter episode length or the deeper dives into each game. And yeah, see you guys.